Jason Burgos for SureDog.com, and I'm joined by a man who is very busy living the life of a father, a coach, a manager, MMA agent, podcaster. He's just doing it all these days. He is a former fighter who now leads the strategic charge for a bunch of talented fighters, including Calvin Kattar and Rob Font. He is New England's own Tyson Chartier. Tyson, my man, thanks for joining me tonight, all the way from Las Vegas, where you were just at the UFC Performance Institute doing some work. I mean, you're busy. You're doing stuff all the time.
Yeah, man, it was it's been a busy summer so far, and we forgot to say I'm a husband too. My wife will get mad if I forget.
Sorry, husband. Sorry. Will she watch this? I'm sorry then.
Probably. She'll watch it just to troll me. If I say 10 things good, she won't mention those. She'll just mention the one thing bad I said.
I mean, I think it really is the part of being a wife or a girlfriend, just to really torture us, isn't it? I mean, right?
Exactly. You need a critic.
It keeps us humble. But, I have a whole bunch of questions for you because you are a man wearing many hats as you wear a hat right now. So talk to me about, like, your background, like, where you grew up. I was watching a video. Is it true you are one of 6 kids? Is that correct? Like, how did you get into MMA? Like, just give me some background on you, the person, before we even get to all this MMA, professional coaching and managing stuff.
Yeah, I was just an athlete growing up. Our parents got us involved in sports when we were young. I think I played football for 10 years, baseball up until high school. Did gymnastics and basketball up until high school. In high school, I just did football and wrestling. Our high school got a wrestling team my freshman year, so I joined it and just kind of fell in love with grappling. And then after I get out of high school, I started looking at colleges. I was thinking about going to wrestle. I was just so sick of cutting weight that I ended up staying local and then walked on to the lacrosse team at Southern New Hampshire University and ended up being a 2-year starter, my junior, senior year, and I was captain my senior year. So I picked it up pretty quick and had a lot of fun with it. And then after that, after grad school, I was just itching to do something and started doing jiu-jitsu and then just kind of fell into helping a kid spar for his fight. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'll do one fight. And then 15 fights later, 4 or 5 years later, next thing I know, I'm cornering all my teammates, getting myself fights, getting all my teammates fights, and it just kind of happened. Next thing you know, all of a sudden I'm managing all my friends, and that's how it started.
Were you at all like into the sport? As growing up, did you watch old school UFC stuff? Did you get into it later? Like I got into it just by chance by like Kimbo Slice and Brock Lesnar. That brought me to the sport. Were you a longtime fan and had favorites?
No, I remember when it first came out, and you go to Blockbuster and you order to get the VHS cassette and watch it with my dad and my brothers at home, and just thinking it was so cool. And so I always knew what it was, but it wasn't until I saw my first apartment I had out of grad school, I saw an ad for a pay-per-view, and I think it was Forrest Griffin versus Tito Ortiz.
Okay.
And then so I was like, oh, I'm going to watch that fight. So I ordered it, and then I just kind of started slowly getting into it. And I want to say like 2 months later, I was going out to Vegas for 4th of July, just for a trip. And on the way back, there was a guy standing in front of me that had the Ultimate Fighter Comebacks bag, holding it. And so I just tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, oh, were you at the show? Because I knew they were filming it.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was Dana White.
What?
So I was sitting behind Dana White in the line to get on the plane. I was like, oh, man, I really love what you're doing with the sport. I mean, I was so new to it that I didn't even know Dana's name. I just knew who he was, And then so we get, me and my friend get on the plane. We sit down, and next thing he sits down next to us. So I got to pick his brain for like 5 hours on a plane.
Does he remember? Like, have you brought this up to him? Like, since you've been backstage?
3 years later, 3 or 4 years later, I saw him at a movie theater in Vegas, at like a mall or at the Red Rock, I think. And my buddy took a picture with him, and I was like, yeah, I met you like 3 or 4 years ago. And he's like, oh, cool. And we like had a difference of opinion on what year it was. Because I was like, no, it was when Shamrock fought Tito Ortiz the second time and like all this stuff. So, but he meets so many people, I don't expect him to remember me. So that's the only time I had ever brought it up.
So what made you make the decision that, okay, fighting, I'm done with this. This is enough for me. Like, was it a health thing? Was it a physical thing? Was it a thing like you lost interest in it? Like, what made you say, okay, yeah, I'm done with the fighting. I'm going to transition to this. Did you just enjoy the coaching so much? You're like, I kind of rather do this.
was a combination of a little bit. Like I was always more of like a coach and a strategist.
Mm.
I took more to that than I did actually being a good wrestler. Like I was all state and stuff, but I was on the mats during high school, cornering my teammates and stuff, and strategizing how can we win dual meets based on our matchups versus their matchups, and then coaching guys on the mats, and then so I always had a knack for that, and I always enjoyed it. But once I was doing my career, like I got into it so late, I was like 26, 27. I never had any delusions of going to the UFC because I was just like, all right, I'll just do this. It's fun. It was a bucket list thing. I had a master's degree. I was in tech sales. I was making good money. So it was really just a hobby to get in shape. And then I just slowly started to fall in love with it. But it was never like, oh, I want to go to the UFC. Like, yeah, it would have been cool. But I was always very realistic, and I call myself a realist. That was never really something I was like aiming to do. I wanted to challenge myself, just keep improving as a, as a grappler, and then ultimately a martial artist. And little by little, like my body just started breaking down. I had a bad neck my whole career. I was limping through fights, limping through fight camps. My amateur career, I think I went 7-1. I started out 7-0, and then I came out here in Vegas and fought for Tough Enough for a title, and that was my first loss. Then I went pro. In my pro career, I had to go back to a desk job, and I was nursing my neck. I couldn't do any grappling my whole pro career. Like I was a grappler that was trying to grapple in fights, but I couldn't actually do much grappling during fight camps because my neck would flare up. And so finally, after my last fight, I went and got the MRI, and I had like 4 badly herniated discs, and I tried to avoid surgery for a little while, but it got to the point where literally I couldn't even drive down the highway and hit like a crack in the road. I would like literally start sweating and like wince of pain, have to pull over and like be crying and stuff. And so finally, like one day, it was my girlfriend at the time, but my wife, I had just come back from my last fight. I broke my thumb in my fight, was in a splint for a while, came back, had my first sparring session, came back, and I couldn't even lift my head off the ground in my bedroom. And like she came over, and like we made a decision, like, all right, I got to really get this figured out. And then I went back, and they were like, we got to get surgery. So I think it was like December 22nd, 2012. I got 2 of the vertebrae removed, and then 2 of the discs removed and 3 of the vertebrae fused. And then I knew I would never fight again. I could have technically fought, but I was already 32 at that point. It just didn't make sense. And so then a few months later, I got my thumb fixed. I got surgery on that, and then just came back to the gym and just started really just getting the guys fights, running the fight team practices, coaching guys, started managing more guys. And then, it was 2 years later, Rob's in the UFC. So it was kind of obviously it was unfortunate how it happened, and it would have been nice to be able to have like a healthy pro career, but I don't regret it, man. I learned how to lose. I learned how to win. I learned how to deal with adversity. I learned how to deal with injuries. I learned how to be the away guy, the home guy, the favorite, the underdog. Come back from knockouts, come back from submissions, come back from both, winning and losing sides. Yeah. So there's not much that hasn't happened to me as a fighter. Good weight cuts, bad weight cuts, doesn't matter. That like when these guys are going into battle now, like I pretty much I've done it myself.
Now, the gym you currently work out in, was it the gym that you trained out of even when you were fighting? Did you, just take over teaching jobs there? Did you start your own gym? Like, what's the story of where you're working out of right now?
So I had originally started at a jiu-jitsu school called North Shore Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Danny Barrera. And then I got my purple belt under him, had my first 3 fights with him, and I needed to learn some striking. So I went to Siatong, and that's where I met like Rob and all those guys. So I was there. So I did my last 4 amateur fights, and then or 5 amateur fights, and then my whole pro career at Siatong. That's where I started coaching guys. And then a couple of years ago, people made some changes, and now we're kind of all over the place. Like I guess you could say our home base is kind of like Lausanne's.
Okay.
We have the best training on a Saturday morning in all of New England is Lausanne's. You might have 10 plus UFC fighters there. All the best local fighters, the best amateurs, girls, guys, all shapes and sizes. So it's really like a high level sparring session on Saturday mornings with like some of the best coaches in New England come in to like work with their guys and cross train. It really is cool to see all the different gyms coming together on a Saturday, and then Joe opening up his gym to allow it to happen, and everybody learning from everybody. And then, but we also like go to, there's schools in Maine we go to, schools in Mass, schools in New Hampshire we go to, like Rhode Island. So we do a lot of driving during camp when these guys are in. I think during a regular camp when Rob and Calvin are, I'm driving like 750 miles a week.
Ooh. Now talk to me.
So,
I love that everybody's working on low zones, but it's kind of a meshing of the fighters and coaches from the region. And New England MMA really is coming on because of guys like you. Joe Lozon helped to put it on the map. Delagrade, was a part of that. But you got to have Calvin Kattar, Rob Font now helping to really push it on a level right now. What does it feel like to be a part of kind of like an MMA regional movement where it's really getting on the next level? You got what's the organization out there?
CS.
Yeah, you
CS,
got that.
Cage Titans.
Yeah, a lot of good fighters coming out of there. What does it mean to help be a part of this, something like that?
It's kind of like I guess you could say it's a little bit of vindication finally, because 5-6 years ago, all these local promoters wanted Calvin and Rob to fight each other. They wanted and then let's use the Calvin and Robs of every weight class. They were like, no, they need to fight the number 1 and number 2. And I kind of came at it from, hey, listen, like, they don't need to fight each other. Like, let's let them both get to the UFC. Like, we weren't getting any guys to the UFC. It was a very stagnant time for New England MMA. I felt like we had all this great talent, but we were vastly underrepresented on the national level. And my theory was that it was like egos. It was, whether it be fighters' egos, coaches' egos, managers' egos, promoters' egos, it doesn't matter. It was everybody not looking at the big picture, and they were just looking at like, yeah, well, my guy's better than his, or my promotion's better than theirs, or number 1 versus number 2, that'll sell tickets. And my theory was like, listen, like, number 1 and number 2 should be fighting, like training with each other, and then avoiding fighting each other. If we need to fight a number 2 guy, let's fight a number 2 guy from outside the region. We'll fight like a level of competition like that. We could take tough fights, but don't knock off the other New England guys, because at the end of the day, when we do get to the UFC, we're going to need to train with him. So if he's in the UFC, he's going to be better, then we can all help each other. And I think it's finally starting to come to fruition. Like, all those times that, now you look at Rob and Calvin, they're main training partners, practically best friends. I'd say they're probably best friends. They wanted to fight each other back then. Their coaches wanted each other to fight, and I just wouldn't let it happen. I would get in arguments with the promotions, not letting it happen. But and I'm not the only one. Like, I was just one part of this one spoke on this wheel, but I always had the vision of like, no, let's keep these guys away from each other, because eventually they could be beneficial to each other and all of New England MMA. And now you're starting to see, like, you got Rob and Calvin, who are kind of like the pioneers right now. They're kind of like the OGs. They were the newbies for a little bit, and now all of a sudden they're like the big brothers of this New England MMA movement we got going, the New England cartel. And all these younger guys are getting their chances now, so now we got, Randy Costa's in the UFC. Mike Rodriguez is doing well. He lost the last fight, but he's still a beast. Yorgan Castro just got in. We had William Knight fighting tomorrow night in the Contender Series. We have a couple guys fighting in a few weeks. So we just got a lot of momentum. Manny Bermudez, he's 3-0. We just got a lot of momentum right now, and I think we finally built the infrastructure and got all the right people in place to really start having like a good feeder program to the national promotions.
Do you feel like it's almost a different kind of camaraderie and atmosphere in the gyms when you maybe even when you venture, say, like the Performance Institute or some other place around the country, because it's almost this, we are New England, we are the MMA folks from here, we represent this area. Do you feel like a bonding and a strengthening, internally from the different fighters because of something unique like this? Because you see it on certain levels in other places, but not like this, where it's really, let's work together to build up the area.
Yeah, I mean, if we're in New England, if we're at the PI, we see people from New England, they probably went there with us. So it's not like you're bumping into other people out here from New England. But there definitely is, like, now there's more of a camaraderie of, like, the New England guys cheering for each other, I feel, versus maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you might have wanted them to lose because it made your gym or your fighter look better or something like that. And that's just me theorizing. I don't really know if that's true. But I feel like there definitely is a camaraderie now, and like it's very tribal, like, this is New England, we're going to cheer for all our guys. Like, I have absolutely no vested interest in Manny Bermudez. I see him at fights and I shake his hand, I say good luck, but you better believe I'm cheering for him to go get his 4th win this Saturday in California. Like, because what do they say, like, a rising tide raises all ships. Like, he's part of New England, and he goes and wins a fight, it makes it easier for my other 35ers to get in, because they see that, all right, he's a 35, he came out of New England. Look what him and Rob are doing for that division. Look what Randy Costa's doing for that division. Now the next guy's coming up, like, they're paving the way for them, and it should make it, less barriers to entry for them. So we just got to keep performing at this stage.
Now, I recently talked to Tiger Showman, and I did like an interview with him and talked to him about, his coaching strategies. Now, what are your coaching strategies? Do you have a certain style you like a lot of your fighters to kind of model, are built around? Because he had as he said, a formula, and everybody that came in, he had, built them through this formula of kickboxing and, the grappling, stuff like that. Do you have like a formula that you like to coach for your fighters? Or do you get a guy, you watch and you study, and you learn his specific skills, and you kind of grow and nurture him through what is unique to him or her?
I think in New England, it's a unique situation. Like Tiger Schulman's got kind of a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know the specifics of his gym, but I assume a lot of the guys are doing most of their training with him there,
Mm-hmm.
under his roof. New England, like I said, we drive a lot. Like we have to go. We do our wrestling up in Maine. We do some of our striking in Boston. We do some of our jiu-jitsu in either Boston or, even some up in Maine too. And then down in Easton with Joe, we're doing our sparring down in Easton, and sometimes we'll do our sparring in Rhode Island. And so we're going to a lot of different places.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to really kind of almost have a village atmosphere where it's this coach has to really, we have to trust this coach to work on his jiu-jitsu, this coach to work on his wrestling, this coach to work on his boxing. And then kind of like there's, I try to be the guy that kind of glues it all together with their help, I don't know everything. I can't teach someone how to throw a jab as well as a boxing coach can,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a pretty good eye for strategizing, and I'll know when we should be throwing jabs so the idea is just collaborating with all the different coaches and bringing in specialists for training. And I can't go to every training session. These guys are all over New England. I got kids, so I try to check. When we're in camp. I'm checking in on the different sessions. I'm calling the coaches on the phone. I'm at all the sparring sessions for the MMA sparring.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where it all comes together, and we film that, and then we'll collaborate, and I'll coach during the sparring. But it's really hard. It took a while, but I feel like we really get a good team in place. The unfortunate part is we do have to do a little bit of driving, but it's, bringing in the best boxing coach for that fighter, the best Muay Thai coach, the best wrestling coach, and then the best jiu-jitsu coach, and then finding the best sparring, and then, putting together those rounds, and then talking to the coaches about what we need to work
Mm-hmm.
on and what we don't want to do for this fight. Because, if we're planning to wrestle and then we have our boxing coach, keeping them in a big high stance, so it's just everything has to be together. But as far as I think every fighter is different too. I think there can be a loose system,
Mm-hmm.
but I think every fighter is going to handle things differently, and you got to understand their, where they are at in camp, what's going on in their personal life. You really have to know them on a personal level to know what makes them tick during camp. Because there's some days where you need to just the fighter shouldn't be in the gym, and then there's some days where you just need to kick them in the ass a little bit and make them work harder because they're just kind of being, they're just having a day.
Mm-hmm.
But that just comes with knowing them over time and spending time with them. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it like a system, but I definitely think we have a structure for what could work in the environment we have in New England, and that's to try to get the best coaches working together and then putting it all together really on Saturdays, and bringing the best guys in to spar with them, and then coaching, and then the next week, calling the wrestling coach, but hey, listen, he was getting taken down by this every time. Look at the video. Here's what I need you to work on, and then collaborating with them and making sure that we're defending the takedowns in a way that doesn't put us in jeopardy for whatever that opponent's good at and stuff like that. So, yeah, man, it'd be nice if we had everything under one roof and everybody drove to us, but we don't.
Is there a plan for something like that, or is Lausanne's gonna maybe expand and become that one-stop shop? Are you're thinking about maybe you partnering or opening your own thing? Is that something maybe in the future?
No, I had a jiu-jitsu school for a couple of years back, and I realized very quickly I was not passionate about teaching beginners and teaching just straight jiu-jitsu or wrestling. I really like coaching MMA.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm passionate about. That's managing the guys, coaching the MMA guys. That's really what I like is fight practices and breaking down film and strategizing how to beat some of the best guys in the world. That's really what I think about before I go to bed, other than my family.
Well, that's what I mean. Like
an
AKA, how that's for the pros, or would you or something like that? It's something.
I don't know, man. It's tough because I think that's an everyday thing. Because I think some of the problems that you see in MMA is a lot of people switching switching teams and switching gyms is like you get with this gym and then you have a guy that's with you all the time, and you get to the big show and then other people see it and then they come to your gym and they want that help too, and then you're helping them, and next thing you know, you're never at your gym. So, and then everybody leaves and they go to the other gym, and then the same thing happens there, and then you build up the new guys again, and so I think that's really why you see a lot of these waves of ups and downs in different gyms. With this gym's the hot gym right now, and then they're going through a down spell, but now all their prospects got good again, and you kind of see those ebbs and flows of the gym training. But I think Joe had some. Joe was looking for more mat space. I think his gym's getting pretty packed. I know he's doing a really good job on the business side of it in terms of growing Lausanne MMA. So I don't want to speak for him, but I think that is in his plan, is to try to expand a little bit. And I always joke with him. I'm like, listen, man, you got to get some dorms there. Like, and I really think that all we need is a bigger facility that has some dorms. Yeah. And we offer training that is second to none. Like I feel like we go in there and fight some of the best guys in the world from the best camps in the world on paper. And I feel like sometimes we outcoach them and sometimes we outcamp them, and then we outfight them. Like, we have skilled fighters, we have skilled coaches. I think if we had a Joe, just get dorms, buddy, and then we'll. Because I think if we had something like that, I think right now, like, people aren't looking at New England as a viable option when they're looking to switch camps. They're kind of like, oh well, I don't know where I'd go. Like, it seems like they're training everywhere. There's a lot of driving. But if we had like a mega camp, like if we had a big gym with dorms, I think you'd start to see some people try it out.
Now, a major thing coming up for you and one of your key fighters is Calvin Kattar. It's been officially made he will be fighting in Boston against Zabit Magomedsharipov. Is this the biggest fight for you, and maybe the biggest and toughest challenge for you so far in your coaching career, to dealing with Zabit's awkward length and his strikes and his style of sambo and how he mixes it all together? Is this one of the greater puzzles you've had to work with Calvin on to solve?
I'd say in terms of like big opportunity fights, that I would put this one right there when Rob fought Sun Sao. That was like, we were fighting the number 3 guy at the time. The guy had a win over the champ. You beat him, you're like in some serious talks for a contender fight or a title fight or something like that. So in terms of like what's at stake, I think this is very similar to that. But the difference here is that nobody's yet beat Zabit in the UFC. He's got like a style that is kind of crazy. He throws some crazy stuff. He's super confident in his ground game, so he doesn't worry about what he throws on the feet. He's obviously he's very well-rounded. His body type adds a specific challenge. Yeah. And then I think the hype around him is second to none. Like, I think if you asked everybody right now who's going to be the future of this division, a lot of people are saying Zabit Magomedsharipov. So I think it's a huge, huge upside fight for us. I think to a lot of people, the Lamas fight was a coming out party for Calvin, but honestly, that's what we expected in that fight. So like for us, it's like he's still scratching the surface on what he can do. I know we have a future champion in our hands, and I think the Zabit fight couldn't have lined up any more perfect. It's at home in Boston. We're the co-main event, and we get to fight a guy that's going to allow us to skip the line. We go and we beat him boring, we'll still be ranked number 5. But if we freaking go out there and put on a show like I know Calvin can, like, now all those people who think he's the next champ are like, okay, maybe that Moicano fight was a fluke. It's not like he got beat up. He just got outpointed. But Calvin's here to like put fists on guys' face, put him away, get his hand raised, and then move on to the next one. So, he's super excited about the fight. It's the fight that we wanted. We sat down, we put names on paper, and we said, like, here's our options. Realistically, these are the guys that are available. And we talked about the pros and cons of each of them. And with flying colors, the biggest upside was Zabit. And in my opinion, he's freaking dangerous. But you know what? So is Josh Emmett. So is Jeremy Stevens. So is all the other guys. Like, they're all freaking dangerous. Everybody at this level is so freaking good and can finish you. But the thing with Zabit is he doesn't have that like one punch power that like an Emmett or a Stevens has. So it's a little bit of a less scary fight, I guess you could say. When the fight's on the feet,
Mm-hmm.
like, because Zabit can take a shot, but he's not dropping guys with his fists,
Right.
you know. Whereas Calvin, if you stand with Calvin, man, like he puts hands on you, like you're going down,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he's shown that. He's two first round knockouts in a row. Um, Against legit guys, and then the Burgos fight, obviously that kid's a stud.
Mm-hmm.
He finally put him away in the third round,
Yeah.
but I think Zabit's going to try to wrestle with us. I think he's going to have to try to wrestle, and then I think people are going to really realize how good Calvin's wrestling is. That's something he hasn't really had to showcase yet.
You mentioned Emmett and Stevens. Were those the other fighters you were thinking of on your list for him to fight?
Well, when we first had the fight, we didn't know what was going on. We heard all these rumors about who was booked and who wasn't, so we thought it was going to be Stevens. And then Stevens had even asked Sean Shelby for the fight, and we were like, "We'll fight whoever gives us a title shot the fastest." That's how confident. We're playing poker, and I know I got pocket aces, so just tell me who we're fighting. Is kind of how I look at it with Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Stevens had gone up to Calvin in Vegas at the International Fight Week, and then brought him over to Sean. He's like, "Hey, let's do this fight in Boston." And Calvin's like, "I'll fight anybody." And then Stevens ended up getting the Yair fight. But and then when Stevens got taken away, I was hearing that Zabit was possibly fighting in Moscow in November. So I was like, well, we're probably going to end up getting Emmett then, because he's really the only one that wasn't booked. And because you're talking about I think Ortega's going to fight the Korean Zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Frankie's going down. Volkanovski's going to fight Max probably. So there's really no one available ranked above us that would have made any sort of sense.
Right.
He was the only one. So, we looked at it. We were thinking it was going to be one of those three.
Now, talk to me about, because you mentioned, what you went through as a fighter, and, going through the amateur ranks, going to the pro, coaching people, going through what your injuries you had, but you also, you had like a full-time job, and you gotten your master's, you gotten your degrees, you were in the business world, that you transitioned into being a part and making Top Game Management, which is awesome that there is a specialized management team out there for all these fighters. How did that come about? What made you make that decision to be like, yeah, let's go into MMA, agency and management as well?
So I was getting myself fights.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2009. I fought 4 or 5 times. And my teammate, Rick Hahn, he'd fought 4 or 5 times. And the rest of the gym, I think, had 5 fights the whole year or something like that. And so no one was active. Everybody was getting frustrated. They weren't getting fights. And so finally, Louis Carapi, my teammate, he had asked me, he's like, "Can you get me a fight?" He was an amateur. I was like, okay. So I got Louis a fight. And then I got Rico DeShulo a fight on the same card. Both amateurs. They were the main and the co-main event in an all amateur card or something. And the next thing, someone else was like, "Hey, can you get me a fight?" And then next thing I know, all the fighters in the team are like, "Can you get me one? Can you get me one?" And then they're all amateurs, so we're just getting fights, And I was cornering all these guys.
Yeah.
And then they kept climbing the ranks, and then Rob ends up being 10-1 pro, and he's in the UFC now. And we're like, okay, well, now we got guys in the UFC. And then at that point, guys from other gyms started to reach out and be like, "Hey, can you help me?" And I was like, all right, well, what do we do here? I feel like I'm doing all this stuff. No one even knows what I'm doing. And they just think I'm some guy who carries a bucket. And, so it was really I had met Ed Cap through some people, and he's kind of the one that gave me the push a little bit. He was like, "Hey, man, maybe you should, make this official." And, give it a name, call it, it's called something. And the only reason we came up with Top Game is because the jiu-jitsu school I had for a couple of years was called Top Game BJJ. So we were like, what do we call this? And we were just trying to think of something quick. So I was like, I'll just call it Top Game Management. And so then Ed made all the social media pages, and then we were off at that point. And it was also kind of a smokescreen to, shut the in-laws up. They're like, "What are you doing? What do you do all day? You got to get a job." It's like, well, I do all this work.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I do. So now, just make sure we post on there enough to see that I'm busy.
Now, you've been in these various parts of the sport, inside the cage, outside the cage, kind of behind the curtain, doing with the management stuff, agency stuff. Talk to me about the industry in general. If there was something you could change about how the industry and the sport is right now, what would it be? What is something we still need to work on to get this right? Is it a reffing thing? Is it a judging thing? Is it a promotions thing? Is it a fighters thing? Is it how they're marketed? What's something that really grinds your gears that you can't stand that's still a problem in the sport today?
I think an easy fix is especially when there's a show and win bonus. I think if you had 5 judges, especially UFC fights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could just have 5 judges instead of 3, I think it would minimize the risk of errors.
Okay.
So just put 5 judges instead of 3, and then I think that would resolve a lot of like those weird split decisions that you're getting,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe reduce the risk of people getting robbed, because they're not just getting robbed of a win on their Tapology resume; they're getting robbed of half their money.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. But from an industry thing, I mean, I really think it comes back to like what I would, tell my kids or say to my wife is like, treat people how you want to be treated. Like, I have a lot of guys, a lot of other agents that reach out to my guys and try to poach them and try to tell them like, oh, you're being mishandled. You should do this. I could get this for you. I could make this happen. And at the end of the day, like, I don't reach out to any guys and try to steal them. I would prefer if people didn't try to do that to my guys and try to, it's just, lack of integrity, I think. Just treat other people how you want to be treated. If you don't want people inboxing your guys and trying to ask who their man, hey, I know you're a good manager, but like, I could probably help you. I feel like you should get this much, or saying, hey, give me a call. I'd love to chat. Like all that stuff. It's like, I guess that's one way to do business. And that's part of any business. There's going to be people that, maybe don't have the same moral code as you, but in terms of just like build your own guys, get them to the show, treat them how they deserve to be treated. And if they leave you like for a difference of opinion, that's fine. Like, there's always going to be some turnover in any business, but don't try to make your business off of stealing other guys that have already, been built up to the point where, they're at the big show. I just think that's one thing that, definitely grinds my gears. It can be frustrating, man,
Yeah.
And it would just be easy, like, I took the NFL exam. Like, you're not even allowed to poach. If you get caught contacting a guy that's under contract with someone else, like, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, just, if you don't want people doing it to you, don't do it to them.
Always like to end interviews on learning more about the fight, but we've learned a lot about you already. But let's learn some of the non-business things. Let's learn some of the non-management, the non-coaching, the non-fight. Like, what do you like to do for fun? Like, the opposite of grinding gears, the fun things, the passions. What are some, I mean, I know you got the cute kids, adorable kids. I'm sure it takes up a ton of the time. What are some of the things are you a big movie fan? Or what music do you like? Do you like to cook? Do you like to bicycle ride? What's some of the things you do when you're not involved with this crazy MMA game?
It's tough, man. I feel like my passion's always, you have that one thing that you're passionate about, right? Like, it's always going to be family, but then you have the thing that like motivates you to be like a better person, right? And that's obviously, like we're trying to win titles here, so that's like really does consume a lot of my headspace. But if I only do that, I start to get neurotic. I start to be like, well, I start obsessing over it, and like that's not good, So I feel like I get into I binge watch some Netflix shows. 'Cause I'm a night owl. So I'll stay up late at night and watch some shows. And
give me some shows. What's some of your favorite Netflix shows? Have you seen The Haunting of Hill House?
Dude, at the end of the
that show is awesome.
Like, the head jumps in from the back seat. I was like, I literally like screamed. My wife woke up. She's like, "You're such a pussy." Like, I get startled.
The show's good. It's scary.
It is good. It's good. I just finished Euphoria on HBO.
I've heard of it.
You haven't watched that. Yeah. It's a pretty messed up show. Mm-hmm. It's got like that Zendaya girl from Nickelodeon or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
but it pretty much hits
up
every hot button that you can hit, like social issue. Like we're talking about, transgender, infidelity, child, like cyberbullying. Mm-hmm. It's just everything. Like everything you could like put uncomfortable topics you could talk about. It's in the first episode, so it's like.
What about Black Mirror?
This is a pretty crazy show.
Have you seen Black Mirror?
Yeah, I watched all those.
Give me 2 of your favorite Black Mirror episodes, because there's so many of them. It really is a tough question.
So I really like the one where they put the chip in the daughter gets lost at the beginning of the show. Mm-hmm. And then she chases a cat down to the field, and they lost her for like a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so they put the chip in her head where they can watch everything that she sees through her eyes, mm-hmm. and like also blur out blood and kind of have like a sensor, And then she gets older and the mom starts watching. She's like, watching have sex and stuff and being able to try. It was just, I thought that was kind of interesting because that's like stuff that I struggle with now. It's
Yeah.
like, I couldn't imagine losing one of my kids. So I'm like,
Mhm.
would I do that? You can say no, but it'd be nice to know where they are all the time.
Mhm.
And I think we'll be able to, probably just be able to use our phones for that. But that one and the second one, I think it was the one where they had like a chip, like they had a little button on their hand,
Mhm.
and they could rewind people's memories, rewind their
Oh,
memories.
yeah,
Remember the
yeah.
guy
In the
caught his wife,
eyeball.
like, yeah, he walked in and he saw like his wife talking across the room, and he was able to like
Yeah.
zoom in, replay it,
Yeah.
and he saw that she was like cheating. I think that was pretty cool too.
I see. There's a lot of interest in chips and watching people. What's
Yeah,
happening here?
I don't know, man. I think my wife's got me on that iPhone location thing. She tricked me into doing that, so now she can tell where I am all the time. But I don't know. Yeah, no, I like to binge watch those shows, and then Last Chance U.
Oh yeah, I just watched
You
season
watch
4
that?
of that. I didn't see the first one, but I saw season 4, which is a mess in itself.
Yeah, yeah, man. And now I guess they're going to Oakland next season. They're doing
Okay.
like a junior college in Oakland.
Okay.
So I don't know if maybe that coach got a new job in Oakland or something. I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, man, it's that kind of helps me unwind a little bit, and then I'm not super religious, but I hang out with some of the guys. My wife is in the church, so
Mhm.
we go out on Sundays, and then I like one night a week I'll go to dinner with some of the guys from church, and it's cool because they think it's cool that I do the MMA stuff, and they ask some MMA questions.
Mhm.
Really, they don't care. But it's cool to like hang out with people that literally don't care about fighting. They're just
Mm.
friends. They just want to, how's your family? How's
Right.
this? And, they're not trying to get something from me. They're not trying to like find an angle. They're not trying to get me to talk to someone for them. It's cool to just go back to like, we could be bros that night
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just either whether it be bowling, going to dinner or whatever, playing cornhole. So I enjoy that. Like we do that once a week, like late on Thursday nights. And that's pretty enjoyable.